Welcome to Rare Action Toolkit number 5, What You Need, Legislative Visit Materials. In this toolkit, we're going to discuss all the things you need to bring with you to a legislative visit to make sure your message is most impactful and that the legislator and their staff remembers you and your message. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out a couple other toolkits in this series. Number 3, Meeting with Your Legislator, and toolkit number 4, The Legislative Process. So what is an elevator pitch? You may have heard this term before or other terms like it, such as talking points or a one-pager or a fact sheet or leave behind materials. While these could have different meanings, they're really all about the same thing, which is how to make your point quickly and effectively, either in person when you're speaking to a legislator or their staff, or in the materials you leave behind for their reference. And specifically, the term elevator pitch comes from this idea that in a legislative office building where people are constantly going in and out of elevators, also occurs a lot in the business world, that you have that 5 to 10 second elevator ride to make your case to the person you want to meet with. And so how do you get that point across in that elevator ride? That's where the term comes from. So when thinking about preparing your pitch, a good start is to answer the following questions in developing it. 1, who are you and who do you represent? What is the problem? What is the solution? Why should the person you're talking to support this? And what exactly do you want them to do about it? If you can answer those questions succinctly, you've done a good job of making your pitch. This is an example of a pitch that you may give to a legislator or other official. It's very important, as mentioned before, that you have an ask there, which you see here at the end of this example. You want them to do something, and that may be as simple as setting up a meeting, but make sure to leave them with that. Otherwise, you're not going to get anything out of that brief conversation you have. Here's some other quick tips for developing your very succinct pitch. 1, be confident and be yourself. Also, it's important to know basic facts and figures about rare diseases, not only just about the disease you're talking about. A lot of times you're going to get questions about the basic information. If you don't have that offhand, it can affect the whole presentation. Don't dominate the conversation. It's also not necessary to include all the details. Keep it short and simple. The time for details is when you schedule the actual meeting, if that's what you're asking for in a specific pitch. And also practice, practice, practice. It doesn't hurt to do it in front of a mirror with friends and family while timing yourself. Be sure to try to keep it around 1 minute. So leave behind materials are exactly that. These are the documents and resources that you leave with the legislator or other officials or anyone else you're meeting with. Again, it's a common term in business world as well. These materials address the same message as your elevator pitch, but often include more detail. And keep in mind that they're intended to be shared publicly. So anything you're leaving with the legislative office, don't put information in it that you wouldn't want to be shared publicly. Also, there are a few key essentials for these types of documents. 1, a summary of your position and the evidence supporting it, such as a fact sheet. Again, background information on who you are and who you represent. Examples of community support and media coverage. So if there's news articles out there highlighting the issue you're talking about, it's great to leave those for a legislator and show that you're not the only one there paying attention to it. And finally, contact information. You do not want to leave them something and that they find interesting and then they have no way of getting in contact with you. So every document you leave with a legislator, it's usually a good tip to keep your contact information on it. A couple of quick follow-up points. A lot of this may seem trivial, but leave behind materials can actually be quite important. For 1, what you leave behind may be the only record your legislator has of the meeting. And so they may not remember what you talked about, they may not even remember that they met with you at all, but having that record can be important. And that's because sometimes these issues do come back up down the line. You may not have been successful at the time of your meeting, but a month down the road, even a year down the road, another group may come in and talk to your legislator, or they may have to vote on a bill, and your materials are the only reference that they have. And that could be a great way to get your foot in the door down the line. So it's always important to leave them. It's always important to have your contact information on them. This is an example of a written leave behind material that a patient might develop or that you may give to your patient advocates. It includes information for them to leave their address and contact information. It also includes a bit of kind of the general policy boilerplate statement. So it makes sure it's clear about the points that they met with about, but there's also a couple blank lines for the patient to share their own story and put their own personal stamp on it. So how do you get started with developing your pitch or developing some leave behind materials? A good resource, as always, is the rareaction.org website. On our web portal, we have templates, we have background research on various issues. We also have some of NORD's own policy statements. Chances are, if you are working on an issue, NORD has already put out a statement on it or has staff currently working on it. And so we may have done even some of the basic legwork for you. In addition, it's good to do some basic internet research to find evidence supporting your basic policy argument or evidence supporting what you want from the legislator. In addition, feel free to talk to NORD. As a member of Rare Action, you have direct access to the NORD advocacy team. We're here to help and happy to review anything that you've developed and help you develop it further. Thank you so much for viewing this toolkit. As always, stay connected to us at rarediseases.org and rareaction.org, and you could always follow us on Twitter at @rarediseases and @rareaction.